Hi, welcome. I'm Dr. Lisa Toppin, and I thank you for joining me for another installment of Inputs to Action. Today, my guest is Julia Ortega, and I'm very excited for this conversation because we're going to touch on some topics that you probably have not heard of and or talked about. So we're going into some rare air here. So I'm excited. Julia, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Lisa. It's so wonderful to talk with you. So
It's
thank you for this invitation.
Well, it's beyond a delight to have you because again, I just in our short time working together and seeing your impact on our organization and then seeing your move and the impact you're having there, I just feel like this is a story we got to tell. But we're going to start from the beginning. We're going to go back. We're going to talk about your background. Now, I'm going to ask you to tell us a little bit about where you come from and how it is that you ended up in one of the greatest HBCUs in
Ah,
the country. I have to say it. Sometimes you just have to acknowledge what it is, right? So tell us about that and your journey through Duke and how you ended up in genomics.
oh my goodness. Um, well, first, let me just say, if I may, that we have talked briefly while I was at Illumina, and you instantly touched my heart. And when you talk with certain people, you feel like your souls connect, however brief. And I felt like I had that with you. So I'm so grateful for that. So thank you. I feel like I'm talking with my sister friend, and that makes all the difference.
Yeah,
So thank you.
thank
Um,
you. That's true. That's just true.
and now that's true.
Yeah.
It's all true. So just a bit about my background. Where to start, right?
Yeah.
I have parents who are African American and Cuban. My mom is from Baltimore, Maryland. My dad is from Cuba. They met while in the Air Force. I have two older sisters who are phenomenal and amazing, who I'm very close with. And I was raised as an Air Force brat on military bases. And I'm saying that to kind of set the stage for my appreciation for people and cultures. I didn't realize it at the time
Mm,
as we moved every 4 years or so, but I was really developing skills to be open to different situations, different locations, different cultures that really help shape part of who I am
yeah.
now. Uh, and I'm really fortunate to have been born into a family that embraces people and loves very openly.
Mm.
Um, Lisa, I'm the type of person where, I'll see you and hug you and touch you, and you'll be like, okay, Julia.
We felt that on the Zoom. You
Yeah,
know what I mean? Yeah.
yes. So this is just part of how I was raised, and it's really ingrained in who I am. So I grew up on military bases. Um, when it was time to make a decision about what college to go to, I had nudges from one of my sisters in particular who was saying, Julia, you know what? Consider an HBCU because military bases do not have that much diversity and representation. Um, so I was really fortunate to get into Spelman College, which took me from New Jersey, where
Mhm.
my father retired from, to Atlanta, Georgia, uh, many miles away from the family I was tethered to so closely. And it was eye opening. It was perfect for what I needed at the time. Uh,
Mhm.
really learned a lot about myself, having pride in myself and showing up. And learned this from Spelman, but also my mom in particular, who's a pioneer in her own right.
Mhm.
Thank you, Mom. But really learned to know who I am and how to name myself and call myself and how to show up and represent. And that was what Spelman helped me learn. So
That's
a
all.
tremendous experience.
Yeah, yeah, and I think most of the HBCUs. I haven't been to all of them certainly, but that's part of
Yeah.
the untalked about value. Just in terms of really
Right.
getting clear about who you are and helping you find that pride. So,
Right.
I know that your mother is a pioneer. We're gonna have a conversation about that in just a minute, but but here, so how did you, what did you study? And were
Yeah.
you, did you know you were heading into the sciences?
I didn't. I studied English, and I studied that because that was the class I was doing best in, which is awful. No one should do what I did. It's my path, and I'll embrace it. But I graduated with a degree in English because I did well in English class.
Mhm.
Um, and I thought I wanted to go into journalism. And so minored in communications, graduated, and then shadowed a journalist around the
Okay.
Philadelphia area. Got up at 4:30 to do a morning segment, watched what they did, and after a couple days, I said, I'm not doing that. Uh, but I started working. I started working in a coordination center for HIV and AIDS clinical trials at the time, using my English as a way to help write scientific protocols, and that was the crossover for me. It was a very administrative function, but it started to expose me to science and the power of research and populations in need. And I think that was a fundamental shift for me.
Yeah,
So
that's
that was key.
yeah, and well, I love that story just from the standpoint that so many kids head off to school and have no idea what to major in. I was one
Mm,
of them, and picked a major similar to the way you picked a major, but um, having the exposures is really the,
yeah,
let's say, the secret sauce or the magic. It's like you have to have some process of elimination, more of this, less of that, and then
that's
use
right.
your skill to be, as you said, to be the bridge to get to the new thing. And I
Right.
think that's the other part of that, right? Is how do
That's
you
right.
have, you have to take you to the next thing.
That's right, Lisa. And it's broad too, right? It's there's a larger thing to mention, and lesson in that is that when we think of our path and where we want to go, we see prescribed routes or routes
Mhm.
for us to travel in. So when we try to make these pivotal decisions for ourselves, we only think almost in two dimension based on what's come before us. We
Right.
don't think, let's follow innately what we're drawn to or what our passion is, and the thing that we're supposed to do will start to create itself around us and how we're moving and shaping. And so I think you're right. During the college years, when it came time to figure out what to do, it was like, okay, what has been done before me, and I will choose something.
Right.
And that was the way that the thinking was made.
Yeah. No, that's so
Yeah,
great. So great. So you started this technical writing, get exposed to science,
yeah.
and so then what? Did you decide to go back for a master's? What was the next step
Uh,
in these
then I knew I wanted to work with patients more directly. And so I started doing things like working for a podiatrist, anything I could do to pick up hours directly working with patients. Um, and I realized I wanted to be a clinician and be in a direct patient facing role, but I didn't want to go to medical school. So then a physician assistant career appeared. I started learning more about it after, I want to say, 6 or 7 years, Lisa, of going back to school, because you can't just go from English into a clinical graduate degree.
Mhm.
So it took about 6 years of getting classes, getting hours. I applied to PA school and got into Duke. And that was another fundamental shift. Moved to North Carolina, uh, attended the program there for 2 years.
Mhm.
And while working there, and this was another key bridge, worked at the HIV and AIDS Center at Duke, who I had helped coordinate in an administrative role prior. So I was able to leverage the contacts before to get a position at the school where I was able to go to grad school and still work in the same field with the same people, but now directly with patients while I was in school. So that was pretty amazing that they opened their doors and let me do that. When I was in PA school, I received a National Health Service Corps scholarship where I was able to work with underserved communities. So after graduating, I then worked in Hartford, Connecticut for a number of years. And that was a huge blessing because I got to do a spectrum of things as a clinician and really learn what needs were for people and for families.
Mm.
So that was foundational as well.
Yeah. So you once you found it, you really went hard on getting hands on and
Yeah.
getting that patient exchange, but then sort of finding the net sounds like the next leg really gave you a deeper appreciation for families and people in need and how that shows up in sort of in this health system and or lack of for some.
That's right.
So
And that was part of realizing that I wanted to show up and represent for people who look like me. Part of my goal was to be able to walk into a room and have a patient see someone who looked like them, who they could talk with and share, and have someone potentially help them as well, because there's such a dire need in underrepresented communities in the healthcare field. So that was the driving force as well.
yeah.
So
Go ahead.
no, so worked in that area and as a PA in internal medicine, women's health, infectious disease for a period of time in various settings, and started working for healthcare payers as a PA, working with special populations.
Yeah. So you really found your, I'm going to say, your niche in terms of um, facing off with patients and providing care. So how
Mm.
did genomics show up?
I know, right?
Now we're in the rare air, everybody. Okay, so how did you get to genomics?
Gosh, I'd like to say it was planned, but I fell into it. So I had research background working in the coordination type center, doing administrative duties. I had research background while at Duke as a PA, working with patients while I was a PA student,
Hmm.
working with patients who were on research studies. And so when I was working for a payer, for United Health Group, designing clinical programs for specialized populations, I heard about a job that became available at Medco Research Institute. And I thought, man, this could really combine my love for clinical research, clinical translational research, and science, and patients. And I took that role, phenomenal team, and stepped back into the research aspects of it, designing clinical trials, running clinical trials for personalized medicine. And that's what brought me back into genomics.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow, there you go. That I mean, just okay. So now we've honed in. You're back in research. You're back now
That's
to
right.
specifically. And the reason I call it rare air. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
just most of us. I'm going to say many people don't really know what genomics is.
Right.
And
Right.
so, right. So, and when we talked about sort of representation and,
Yeah.
choosing a path that was before you. So, what have I seen? And so what am I good at? And so you pick something. So,
Right.
it wasn't on the list. It
No,
wasn't,
no,
it wasn't before you as a menu item to
no,
choose from, right? So you make your way. And that's part of why this conversation is so important because we really want to make sure that people start to understand the power of genomics or the power of the genome and
yes.
what it means for personalized medicine and really sort of where we're going. But if you will, just give us a quick primer on what a genome is. What is a genome?
Sure. Sure. Let's talk about genomics just for a minute.
Yeah.
So it's really looking at the genes in a living organism, and those genes talk, right? Those genes tell one another what to do. They tell each other, you can move faster, you can move slower, you can influence this in this person's body. It's so fundamental and so key to understanding, and this is the connection with the PA part, understanding diseases and
Mhm.
how people can present with symptoms, that it would take as a clinician, seeing someone walk into a room and I look at them and do an exam. Some of these conditions and presentations I would never even think of, and some of the top clinicians could never get without genomics and without genomic testing.
Mm,
So there's such a direct tie-in with the ability to do genetic testing and to have genomics studied with helping solve diseases and helping end paths that people are on where they just don't have answers and they go their whole lifetime not knowing what to call something that they're feeling or presenting with, which can be incredibly debilitating and deadly. So to tap into a field that was so incredibly cutting edge, and just imagine, I want to say, Lisa, this was 30 years ago, 25 years ago. I'm dating myself, which is fine.
mhm,
But to tap into this type of innovation at a time where I had come from uh, a federally qualified health center
mhm.
that has paper charts and has people waiting in lines to get a basic exam was mind blowing. And
Yeah,
this was the environment I was in as a very young, impressionable person. So to think that I could work in that field and then maybe use it to help people and connect underrepresented populations with this technology was just fascinating to me.
yeah. So I've got to ask you,
Yeah,
um,
yeah.
because this is an important part, and of course we're in Women's History Month, International Women's Day is approaching, and the theme this year is breaking the bias. And
Mhm,
one of the ways in which I think we can start to break the bias is through sponsorship. So I'm
mhm.
wondering about that for you. Did you have sponsors? Did you have people that were sort of helping to guide your career, or helping to sort of get you into these places as you make this leap from, the paper and the lines to this, extraordinary
Right,
technology?
right.
Who was guiding you? Who was helping?
I love that question because all credit goes to the village that supports each of us, right, and props us up and moves us along. And I think they're different. That shows up in different ways.
Mhm,
So I've had professional mentors along the way who have seen something in me to say, you should consider being in this,
mhm,
this part of external relationship management with clinics or hospitals or clinicians. But I've also had a very strong support system and village personally who have helped prop me up and move me along the way.
mhm,
So key people who have recognized strengths, recognize things I should veer away from.
mhm.
And Lisa, I want to say I've also had I can think of a preceptor I had while in PA school who also influenced by saying, you know what, I don't think you're that remarkable or you stand out that much. Because people can also move you along and
Mhm,
help you who do not support you,
mhm.
which is an interesting dichotomy. So I've had that a touch as well, and that's really helped me. In addition to the people who have really helped me move along.
Yeah, no, that's so great. I love the call out that both actually help you, because you're
Yeah,
in that moment you're going to decide you don't think I'm special. Watch this.
that's right. That's right. And I
So,
think it just comes with maybe age where you realize that we're all incredibly special and just showing up authentically with who we are
mhm,
is everything, and that's what makes a difference. It's not some preconceived way of talking to a patient or talking to each other. It's just showing up.
it's just showing up. It's just
Hmm.
showing up and being present. I love that. That is that,
Hmm.
and we're all enough. There's
That's
nothing
right. That's
nothing there's nothing extra needed. This you
right.
are enough as you are in the moment. That's
With
uh,
all your experiences that you have to offer on the table.
yep, yep.
Hmm.
I know we could go on, but I want to make sure we get to some of the work that you're doing now. So you have taken a role with genetic health
Genetic Alliance.
and
Yes.
genetic
Yeah,
alliance. Okay, and you're the vice president of I Hope Genetic Health is
that's
your
right.
so tell
That's
us a
right.
little bit about that and
Uh,
what you're doing.
I tell you, it's a dream. It's been a dream. I've been in the role for a few months now, and The goal of the program is to enable this genomic testing that we talked about
Mhm.
to everyone who needs it. It
Mhm.
doesn't matter what your color is, how much money you have, where you live, who you know, who you have access to. We want to get genomic testing to everyone in need across the globe. And that's the remit. And not just genetic testing, but we know, and I certainly know this from the time I was working directly with patients, but it's such a social ecosystem around an individual that's needed to get them to the doctor's office, to help them with childcare, to
Mhm.
get their blood drawn. So we also want to be there for those. They're not even in between times. That's the majority of the time that there's a need to help get to that genetic testing and beyond. So that's the goal of the program. We also want to help when someone gets testing and help find out, how can we get treatments?
Mhm.
How can we enable research? So see, Lisa, how all this comes together, which is, I couldn't have scripted it, right?
Julia, I mean, if this is not a perfect example of somebody being exactly where they're supposed to be at
Yeah.
every stage of the journey. You have everything you need now to
I'm
do
so
exactly what
grateful.
you do. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm
No,
so grateful.
interesting what you just said though, because my brother is an internist, and he said when guys show up in his office, he said he asked them who sent you
Yeah,
because men don't go to the doctor. And I had never considered or thought about the fact that we start with our pediatrician and then we transition to an OBGYN, and we're examined, our entire lives, assuming we have access. But men
right,
don't,
right,
they stop. And then they're only showing up if there's a problem. And
right,
right, or if they've hit a certain age marker where they need to have certain tests, but there's a big span there where they're not actually going to the doctor on a regular
it's,
basis, and so
it's,
you got
that's
quite a
right,
hurdle to not only to get people to the doctor, but then talking about getting this genetic testing and what it can tell you and how it can explain perhaps what
that's
you
right,
have not had answer for.
that's right. And let's be real. By the time someone has symptoms like the men you're talking about, particularly Black men of
Hmm.
color, show up, they already have the condition if they're symptomatic and they're showing up at that stage. Um, but but also knowing that helps us develop programs to help address that. So we know we have to, especially when we go into certain communities, be open and say, how can we reach people who, for whatever reason, are not coming in? How can we understand why they're not coming in? How can we meet them at their front door to get them and pull them in?
Yeah.
But that's all part of being open and not knowing so much,
Yeah.
realizing you don't know that much.
Right. I mean, and that's part of that's part of the hurdle here is just,
Right,
it's one thing if you tell me I've got to go in for a routine exam that I've heard of, but what you're
right,
talking about is testing that I've not heard of or participating in a clinical trial and the
right.
power and the need to do that. And I've not heard of that. And I don't know,
That's
well,
right.
what does this mean and how will it be? And so you've got those questions. And so all of which have great answers, and we have to find ways to help the community
That's
particular,
right.
in
That's
particular
right.
people of color, get represented in these clinical trials to understand more about what's happening with our health, so that we can get to a more personalized outcome. But
That's right. That's
so
right.
yeah, so many things. So this is amazing and exciting that you are doing the work that you're doing and touching the globe. I love that.
It's
Um,
unimaginable almost how wonderful it is and the reach that we're gonna have and the number of people that we can help.
yeah, no, it really really is remarkable. So the idea behind inputs to action,
Mhm.
we get all of the great input from the guests. So, Julia, you have given us great input today. So, the question is now it's time for action. So, what would you have us do? Because this is all about,
Mhm.
we've got to take action on what we're learning, and so what would you have us do now?
My, I would say, and this is part of the journey that I've gone through, is to be as true to yourself as you can and who you are, and show up. Show up when you're asked to do something, say yes,
Hmm.
and be present.
Yeah.
And even if, and I had this wonderful exchange with my colleague Natasha recently. Even if you know there's one thing that you can speak to and add that no one else around the table can say, because they don't have your experience or your background or your knowledge,
Hmm.
speak up and give comment and give a, lend a voice to that discussion, and own yourself and how you represent and show up. And that can be scary, but just step into it, the fear and the anxiety with it.
Yeah, yeah, and
I'll
there's always reward. Brene Brown has taught us so much about vulnerability,
Yes,
and so we're going to just put it under our arm and step into it, just as you're describing. But
yeah.
before we part, we talked about you and I when we first met. We talked about your wonderful mother.
Oh,
So
yeah.
you just mentioned your wonderful mother at the start of our conversation. So I want to circle back to her as we close. So give us a snippet on her
Oh my gosh.
efforts. We just need to know about her.
No, I love my mama, as most of us do, right? My mother, and that's the type of thing where you learn more, and thankfully I've been able to soak in her wisdom and her experience. She was the first African American woman to receive a direct commission into the U.S. Air Force, and she did that directly from Morgan State. It's Morgan State University now, but it was Morgan State College then. And she has been a pioneer, and trailblazer her entire life.
Yeah.
So, such a remarkable person. I can't wait for you to meet her.
I can't wait to meet her, and I just thank her for making history and
Yeah.
breaking that bias and breaking right through. And how many women have been now commissioned from Morgan State University. It is. Um,
Mhm.
since her first move there. So
Yes.
we needed to know about her. So thank you.
Thank you for asking.
Yeah, thank you for sharing, and thank you for taking the time for inputs to action. And audience, I thank you for taking the time for inputs to action, and I will see you next time.
Thank you. My pleasure.